Imagine watching a war unfold live on television. Green tracers slicing the night sky, explosions flashing on the horizon, and a reporter whispering from a rooftop like the city could hear him. This was the Gulf War, and it didn't just change the Middle East, it changed how wars are sold. Because the world didn't only fight in the desert, it fought on television screens. So here's the question. Was this a clean, surgical victory, or the birth of modern warfare as a performance? Now, rewind. On August 2nd, 1990, Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded Kuwait. Fast, brutal. Within days, Kuwait was overwhelmed. But this wasn't just a territorial grab. Iraq was drowning in debt after 8 years fighting Iran. Saddam accused Kuwait of flooding the oil market and driving prices down, crushing Iraq's recovery. He also claimed Kuwait was taking oil from fields near the border. He demanded money. Kuwait refused, and Saddam made a bet. The world would complain, then move on. Then comes a detail people still argue about. Days before the invasion, Saddam met the U.S. ambassador, April Glaspie. The message he took from that meeting was that Washington might not intervene in an Arab border dispute. Whether that was a misunderstanding, diplomatic ambiguity, or wishing thinking, Saddam acted like he had room to move. He didn't. The United States began building a coalition. Dozens of countries joined. The United Nations condemned the invasion and demanded Iraq withdraw. And suddenly, this became bigger than Kuwait, because if Saddam kept Kuwait, every border in the region would feel negotiable, and every oil state would feel vulnerable. By January, the deadline was over. On January 17, 1991, Baghdad lit up. For weeks, the coalition launched an air campaign the public had never seen before. Precision footage, night vision, missiles filmed like they belonged in a video game. On television, it looked clean, controlled, almost unreal. But the goal wasn't just destroying tanks, it was breaking the system, electricity, communications, supply lines, so Iraq's army would collapse before the ground war even started. Then the ground offensive hit. In a matter of days, coalition forces liberated Kuwait. Iraqi units surrendered in massive numbers. And then there was one image that never really went away, the highway of death. Retreating convoys were destroyed on the road out of Kuwait, miles of burned vehicles. Supporters called it a necessary strike. Critics called it excessive. Either way, it sent a message. This wasn't just victory, it was dominance. But here's the twist. Saddam survived. No march to Baghdad, no regime change. Officially, the reason was fear of chaos, fear Iraq would break apart, fear the region would explode. And that decision became a fuse, not an ending. Because after the camera crews left, the war didn't stop. It changed shape. The Gulf War also rewired the media. Reporters weren't free to roam. Access was controlled. Briefings were managed. Footage was curated. The public saw smart bombs and confident spokesmen. They saw less of the messy part. Families trapped in blackouts, neighborhoods hit, hospitals struggling when power and water systems failed. Then a story helped lock public support, a dramatic testimony about babies taken from incubators in Kuwait. It spread everywhere. It was repeated by politicians, and later it was exposed as deeply misleading, tied to a public relations campaign. The lesson was brutal. In modern war, perception is a weapon. Now the bill. Sanctions hit Iraq for years. The stated target was Saddam's regime, but ordinary people took a huge share of the damage. Medicine shortages, broken infrastructure, a collapsing economy. Exactly how many died and how directly sanctions were to blame is debated. But what isn't debated is this: millions lived through a long aftermath that never appeared in the victory montage. Inside Iraq, uprisings erupted, Shia in the south, Kurds in the north. Saddam crushed them. And US troops remained in Saudi Arabia far longer than many expected. That decision enraged extremists. Osama bin Laden would later cite it as a major grievance. And the Gulf War became a template: coalition war, air power first, media management, clean language. Then long-term consequences that outlived the headlines: no-fly zones, periodic strikes, a weakened state, a region that kept destabilizing, and eventually, 2003, another invasion, built on the legacy of 1991. So when people say the Gulf War was a victory, ask them, clean for who and for how long? Because the Gulf War didn't just happen in the desert. It happened in living rooms, on screens, in narratives. And the shape of modern warfare, politically and psychologically, still carries its shadow. So let me ask you one last thing. If you had to choose, was the Gulf War a victory or the beginning of a longer war in slow motion?